health, wellness, fitness, and everything in between. We're removing the taboo from what really matters in midlife. I'm your host, Michelle Folan, and this is Asking for a Friend. It's hard to ignore the hype in skincare. If you are on social media, you see what I see. The newest face creams being promoted by your favorite influencers, people decrying certain additives and fragrances as hormone disruptors, or there is the gimmick of the day. Face tape, anyone? How do we sift through the myth and the truth to make the right decisions for our wants and needs when it comes to having our healthiest, most youthful glow? I went straight to the top when seeking our guest today. Dr. Ellen Gendler is renowned for her straightforward, gimmick-free approach to skincare and is highly regarded as a leading authority in cosmetic dermatology. Consistently included in New York Magazine's Best Doctors list, Dr. Gendler is well regarded for her honest academic approach. She is also a clinical associate professor of dermatology at NYU's Langone Medical Center and a fellow of the American Academy of Dermatology. Dr. Ellen Gendler, welcome to Asking for a Friend.
Nice to be here, Michelle. Thanks for inviting me.
And, I'm like a fangirl thing going on here. So I've been following you for quite some time, but I would love for you to tell us a little bit more about you, where you're from originally, and maybe some family details, kids, and that sort of thing.
I'm a born and bred New Yorker, and I've been here forever. And I went to medical school here at Columbia. I've been practicing for 35 years in New York City on Fifth Avenue, across the street from the Metropolitan Museum. And I have two sons, and one's married, one's not. My married son is a doctor at Mass General, and his wife is a pediatric dermatologist at Boston Children's. And my younger son's a lawyer in New York, and he's getting married in March. And I have two little grandsons.
Congratulations.
That's me.
And you've got a bunch of underachieving kids, I can tell.
Yeah, maybe. But only one of them decided to become a doctor. My husband's a doctor too, and he's a gastroenterologist in New York City as well. But I've been doing this a long time. And when I started in dermatology, there was no such thing as an influencer. There were very few skincare items. There was no Botox, all this. And my career sort of grew from the bottom up. Just briefly, how did I get into this? Well, my expertise started in contact dermatitis, which is allergies of the skin. And I did extra training in London for this. And back in the day when there weren't that many products, people would still develop problems from them. And they would refer them to us at NYU in the contact dermatitis clinic to figure out what the issues were, what were they allergic to. And as a result, I sort of became the expert on cosmetics, even though there weren't that many. And as the years went on, things got more complicated. Then fillers began to be, widely in use in Botox. And I was the principal investigator on the first hyaluronic acid filler to come to the United States, which came and went pretty quickly. It's called Hyaluronic, and it's interesting because it was very much like the topical hyaluronic acid that we have now, but in an injectable form. It was not cross-linked, so it didn't last very long. But anyway, that's how I got started. And over the years, I sort of became known as the person who knew all about cosmetics, and that's what happened. Fast forward to today, it's the freaking Wild West out there now. It's a whole other ball game. I used to know every single product on the market, every ingredient, and every product. You couldn't possibly begin to do that nowadays. And there is so much bad information that it inspired me as somebody who was not even on social media at all. I had had some back surgery. I was home. I had nothing to do. I was on steroids for my back, and I was like just scrolling my phones. I was so bored. And all of a sudden I came across these Instagram accounts, and I was going crazy. And I don't know, something happened. I made one or two posts, and they went nuts. And that's how my social media thing happened. It's really crazy to me, I have to be honest.
Are you still doing some consulting within the pharmaceutical?
Well, I work full time. I see patients full time. I practice full time. I take some time off on Fridays to do things like this. And to, I hate to even tell you because you'll think I'm nuts, but I went back to get a master's degree in cosmetic science. It's really hard. It's a lot of work. So now I try to donate Fridays to paying attention to schoolwork. And so that's my life. So I do minimal consulting now. I've decided I don't want to do it because the world of influencing is a totally different thing. And frankly, it pretty much turns my stomach. It hurts me to see well-trained physicians earning a living by getting paid by dumb companies to promote their products, many of which they haven't even tried. So I find it really upsetting. And so I don't take a dime for anything. And if somebody wants me to try a product, I'm happy to try it. If I like it, I would gladly say something about it, but I don't get paid one dime. I don't take affiliate links. I don't do anything like that.
Well, and that's one of the reasons why I respect you so much, is I can tell you really speak from your experience and things that are science-backed. And I think that's why this is going to be a really good conversation because...
Well, I hope it's good. So let's dive right in. That's the way.
Okay, we will do that. So I think a really great place to start is, let's talk a little bit about your practice. What's a day in the life of your dermatology practice?
Well, it's very busy. You see lots of patients. I start early in the morning and I see people of all ages. I see babies. I see old people. But, the bulk of my practice is, I'll be honest, is women and ranging from 30, to 70. That's my practice. I see lots of men too, but the bulk of my practice is that. And I would say my practice at this point is maybe, I'm going to say 70-30 cosmetic medical. I wouldn't want to just do cosmetics because I feel like you kind of stop being a doctor. So I just hung up the phone with a patient in whom I just diagnosed a melanoma and I'm arranging for his surgery. So I do medical dermatology and with a focus on cosmetics.
All right. I do want to talk about skin cancer and melanoma because you speak a great deal about sunscreen. And
right.
There's a lot out there in the market on sunscreen, and there's been some conflicting information about what we should be using. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Well, we probably could speak for the whole hour on this, but I'll start by saying it's frankly shocking to me how little most dermatologists know about sunscreen. It's really inexcusable. So I talk about this on my Instagram account, and I try to explain in a really easy to understand way the difference between sunscreens. So if you'd like me to do that, I will. There's a lot of people who say, I only want to use mineral sunscreens. They have no idea what they're talking about. They think that mineral sunscreens are natural, which they're not. So zinc oxide is not natural. It's made. And they also think that mineral sunscreens are a sun block, like they block the light. They don't. And by the way, since I think it was 2019, you're no longer allowed to use the term sunblock. Everything is sunscreen. So there's mineral and there's chemical sunscreens. Mineral sunscreens are those that contain zinc oxide and titanium dioxide. And theoretically, they're reasonable at blocking UVB and UVA, which I can explain in a minute too. But they actually are not great at it. So they're good, but they're not great. And the way you formulate a mineral sunscreen is very important. And many aren't formulated in a way that's cosmetically elegant. To back up, and stop me if I'm just talking too much, but hopefully your listeners will understand this. There's several different types of ultraviolet light. The ones that we are concerned mostly with are UVA and UVB. And UVB, think of it B, are the burning rays. And in the United States, we have excellent filters that screen for UVB. So you'll notice that if you use a standard American sunscreen, whatever it is, Neutrogena, Banana Boat, anything, and you put it on, well, you probably won't sunburn. That's fine. That's true. Then there's UVA. UVA, those are the tanning rays. Those are the rays that are in tanning boots. Those are the rays that penetrate deeper, are believed to be very influential in aging of the skin. And we don't have in the U.S. great sunscreen filters for UVA. The only chemical filter that's approved in the U.S. for UVA in any material way is called avobenzone, and it's unstable, and it has to have supporting players in the formula in order for it to be effective. And its effectiveness is only in a window of ultraviolet A. In Europe and in Asia, for 20 years, they've had other filters approved for UVA, which are much better than avobenzone. And herein lies the problem. In the US, companies cannot formulate with those filters. Maybe they want to, but they can't. So any sunscreen that's made, any chemical sunscreen made in the US will only have avobenzone as its UVA protectant, and anything that says broad spectrum will have to have UVA and UVB. So all chemical sunscreens that you buy that are American made will say broad spectrum. They will all have avobenzone combined with some other things, homosalate, octinoxate. There's a whole bunch of other things they'll combine with, but those are our chemical sunscreens. And then mineral sunscreens are called broad spectrum because they cover some UVA and UVB, but they're just not as good as the chemical sunscreens in Europe. It just is what it is. So starting in maybe 1997, I used to go to France, buy those sunscreens and bring them back. And I actually convinced a few upscale pharmacies in New York to carry them. And that's what I've been doing for many, many years. I've sort of pat myself on the back that since I got started in this whole social media thing and began to talk to the public about it, I feel like I've really taught a lot of dermatologists, sadly, about this. And now it makes me happy to see that lots of them are talking about these products. But there are many filters in Europe that are good, and there are some companies that use more of them than others. Now we're getting kind of complicated, but in my opinion, looking in my practice, anytime I see a patient come in and he or she's tan, and I say, are you using sunscreen? Oh, I use it all the time. I know already that either they're not reapplying it, but most of the time they're using lousy sunscreen. They're using an American product that doesn't shield well from ultraviolet A, so they continue to get tan. So the goal for me is to get patients to stay as out of the sun as they can while still having a normal life. And you can have a normal life and be out of the sun. I'm in the sun all the time. On the weekends, I play tennis, I garden, I do all the things that regular people do, but I just wear a hat, I wear sun clothing, and I wear sunscreen, and I don't get tan. That's just it.
All right. So is this an FDA issue then?
It's an FDA issue, and it's complicated because people start screaming about the FDA and how bad they are, and they're not bad. They're looking out for your safety. There have been some ingredients that have been taken off the market for safety concerns. I know there are all these people that talk about hormone disruptors and this and that, and that's a whole other subject, but there's no evidence that this is true. If you want to be safe, don't use products that have oxybenzone. That's fine. There's so many other sun filters. You don't need to use those. But don't fearmonger and say that sunscreen causes cancer. There's a lot of wellness-based people. I just hate that term so much. And they put forth such terrible information, and they take small tidbits from irrelevant studies, and they scare people into thinking that if they wear sunscreen, they're going to get cancer. And it's just horrible. It's very upsetting because you can't fight these people. They're relentless.
Yeah. So if you're buying, I'll say fancy brands, say you get La Roche-Posay at Walgreens, that will not have.
Right. So here's the thing. La Roche-Posay very cleverly came up when this started to get popular. They came up, and this is years ago, they came up with an American version of their Anthelios, and they made the packaging almost identical to the European one. And probably 10 years ago, the guy that ran La Roche-Posay came to my office because he heard that I had made a wanted poster in my office. And I had this poster that I put and I gave to all my patients. Use this one, not this one. And I took pictures of what the cover of the bottle looked like, because that was just a marketing ploy that is really deceptive. Now, so theoretically, Walmart will have the American version, but I have seen in Walmart and in some other big chain stores that they get the European one in. And I don't know how they do. I'm not sure how that happens, but as long as it's not illegal to sell it, it's just illegal to make it here.
Got it.
Okay.
Okay.
So if you are interested in this, it's too hard for me to give you these gigantically long names because they'll never be able to understand what they are or remember them. But I do post them on my Instagram account. I post the names and I have little cards that I put up so that you can actually write down the names of these sun filters. And if you happen to be in Europe or in Asia or you're in a store, you can look at the back of the box and see if they're in there. And the more of them, the better. It's also funny to me that I always say this, that currently the most complete sunscreen available on the market is made by La Roche-Posay, and it's called Anthelios UV Mune 400. And it has 6 UVA filters in it. It's the most of any product on the market, and it comes in different formulations. Now, I've been talking about this for so many years. I've never even been approached by La Roche-Posay to do anything. They don't give me free tickets to the U.S. Open, but I still say this is the best sunscreen on the market.
And the reason I wanted to get into this first is, first of all, you do medical dermatology, and this is so important, and awareness is key. And if we're not using sunscreen at all, then we need to start doing that. If we're going to tanning beds, we need to stop doing that.
Right.
And my dad was a redhead. I've had several things removed. And so it is a personal journey of mine that I have been on. So,
well, so, if you're not somebody who's worried about skin cancer, and everybody should be because it's curable and largely preventable, I would say, then you should go in for a skin exam periodically and get your moles checked. And if you see spots that change or bleed or suddenly don't heal, then you ought to go get them checked out.
Yeah, I go every 6 months. So
that might be overkill, but if you're someone who's had skin cancers before, then perhaps not.
Yeah. And for anyone listening, Dr. Gendler practices what she preaches. When she says she covers up when she's outside, she does, because I've seen her videos and she does cover up. So there's lots of great clothing out there that is UV protective, right?
Lots. And it's so easy. Of course, I'm not 20 years old walking around in a bikini anyway, but it's so easy to wear nice things. And then if you're at the pool and you take your things off, that's fine. If you're limited exposure, you do the best you can. But there's so many ways of protecting yourself that will not require you to reapply sunscreen all over your arms and your legs 8,000 times. And it's hard to imagine when you're 20 or 30 that you're going to be a 50 or 60-year-old person with brown spots all over that you hate, but you will be. It's just a fact.
Thank you, Dr. Gendler. And we're going to take a quick break. And when we come back, I want to talk about procedures in our faces. What do you control when it comes to your health and wellness? We all know that we should probably clean up our diets, cut out processed foods and alcohol, and get our bodies moving. But there are some things that are a little harder for us to influence. Welcome to midlife, where estrogen declines, belly fat takes center stage, and muscle mass starts to make its exit. I'm not trying to paint a bleak picture, but the midlife woman's needs are different than what worked for us in our 30s and 40s. When it comes to fitness and nutrition, there are science-backed strategies proven to move the needle and help us look and feel our best now and lay a healthy foundation for the next 30 plus years. It's called Faster Way and is the exact program I used to get fit in my late 50s. Join me for my next group coaching round. Shoot me an email at mfolenfasterway@gmail.com or go to the show notes of this episode. Okay, we are back. All right. I got some questions, Dr. Gendler, from listeners, and they were all consistent. What is there that I can do for the saggy skin on my face and particularly the neck?
That's a tough question to answer because once your skin is saggy, there's not a lot you can do to reverse that. So the goal would be to do everything you can before your skin gets saggy so that it doesn't become like that. If it does become like that, what can you do? Oh, there's a couple of choices. The obvious one is to have surgery and have the saggy skin lifted. That's the obvious choice, but many people don't want to do surgery. So there are some other procedures that are okay. They're somewhat helpful. You can get Botox or other neurotoxins put into your platysmal bands in your neck, and that can help lift the jawline and help smooth the neck. But it's not going to turn you into a 30-year-old if you're 50 or 60. It's just not. There are some other devices. There are some ultrasound devices. There's Ulthera, which I don't do. It's extremely painful, penetrates very deeply, and I've seen problems from it. There's another one that's less painful, less invasive, called Soft Wave, which helps somewhat. It's not a home run by any stretch of the imagination. And so for anyone who says that it is, I don't believe them. Some people will actually inject biostimulatory fillers in the neck, like hyperdilute radius or else Sculptra. And those are fillers that are different from other types of fillers. They are injected under the skin diffusely. They're not injected into lines. And, people claim that they help stimulate the skin and tighten the skin. I've never seen evidence that they actually do that. Is it possible that if you get Sculptra injected for 20 years that you will be less likely to have saggy neck than others? Maybe, but I haven't been around long enough to witness that. And it's hard to believe somebody would do that for 20 years, but maybe.
What procedures do you like? What do you typically recommend? A friend of mine had Morpheus 8. She thought that was painful, though.
Yeah, well, I don't recommend that at all. And
okay.
I get a lot of pushback when I talk about it because I've seen so many people who have problems from Morpheus 8. Those providers, I hate that word, but I'll say physicians who use Morpheus 8, they claim that it's because these other people are using settings that are wrong. I can't really speak to that, but that's a deeply penetrating combination therapy that can degrade your fat. I don't want to say if it's done wrong, but probably if it's done wrong and you don't know if you're that person. And I just don't, there's no place for it in my mind. I think that, and it's hard to recommend, what procedures do I like? Well, it depends on the patient. I would do different procedures on someone who's 30 than I would on someone who's 60. But if you're trying to tighten your skin, doing surgery is the gold standard. Everything else you're going to throw money at. Maybe you'll look a little better, but it's not going to be a home run. Surgery isn't always a home run either, but it definitely will fix saggy skin for a period of time. As far as trying to do procedures to prevent that, there's no science behind the concept that by doing constant procedures like Morpheus or any of these other radio frequency in any form will keep your skin tight. There is zero science behind that. So if you hear that, I would go in there skeptical. I think that and I sound like a broken record, but we know that sun damage really affects collagen production in a huge way. So if you start young, protecting your skin from the sun, you have a much better chance of not being that saggy. And then there's the lack of estrogen in women that contributes to sagginess. That's a whole other topic.
Well, and that was on my list.
Okay.
Okay. I take oral estrogen. What about some of these new face creams out there that contain estriol? Mm-hmm. Is there data out there that shows that they're effective? Have you seen that in your own practice?
Well, let me say that I have been using topical estrogen cream in my practice and on myself for 25 years. So I firmly believe in it, that there are many studies. The studies aren't huge, and many of them are observational studies, but it's clear. What we do know is that a lack of estrogen contributes in a big way to loss of structure of skin, to sagging, to loss of collagen, to loss of elastin, to fragility of blood vessels. In every arena, lack of estrogen contributes. So replacing estrogen, and you're talking systemic or topical, is an option. The reasons to use systemic hormone therapy are big, and skin is not really one of them. You would not, if you had a lot of reasons you didn't want to take it, I wouldn't recommend going on hormone therapy for your skin. I do recommend it for many other things, for bone health, etc., but not for skin. It might help, but not really. We don't really see a big difference between women on systemic hormones and better skin. But topical estrogens are a really intriguing area. And yes, there are some companies now that have come out with estriol topical creams. And so briefly, estriol in the United States, that's not the ingredient that's used in vaginal estrogen. In the US, estradiol is used, or Premarin, which is conjugated equine estrogen. Those are the things that are used in vaginal estrogens. And vaginal estrogen is different from systemic. So you're on HRT systemically, you take a pill, but you probably also use a vaginal estrogen.
Yep.
So for 25 years, I've been using vaginal estrogen around my eyes and on the tops of my hands. That's what I've been doing and giving this to my patients, which is perfectly fine. Lately, there's become this new fad because of the growth of the menopause industry, and topical estriol is being used. And that's what's used in Europe in vaginal estrogen. However, topical estrogen, estriol is weaker than estradiol. And so you're not going to get you don't have to anticipate anything more than you will with topical estradiol. The studies that have been done have all shown it to be very safe and pretty effective. I say pretty because you can't expect topical estrogen to reverse your wrinkles, to change your pores, to do all kinds of magic things. But as you start losing systemic estrogen, as you hit your 40s and you're perimenopausal, replacing local estrogen makes a lot of sense to me. You do it vaginally. It's safe. It's not systemically absorbed in any significant way, and that's been proven in many, many, many studies. And so I decided to treat the very thin skin on the face around the eyes in the same way that you treat the vaginal epithelium. And that's how I started to do it. And frankly, I came up with this when I had this patient. She was a New York socialite, very fancy lady, and she was maybe 82, I think, at the time. And she came in and she had the most beautiful skin. And I said to her, "My God, your skin's so gorgeous. What do you do?" And I thought she was going to say she uses retinoids. And she goes, "Well, honey, I've been using my vaginal estrogen all over my face for the last 20 years. Now, that's what gave me the idea. She gave me the idea. I was a little afraid to do my whole face. And you should also be aware that topical estrogen was a huge thing starting in the 1950s. Helena Rubinstein, Max Factor, and endless other companies had topical estrogen in their creams. And these were believed to be the fountain of youth. You should see what these ads look like. I'm giving a talk on this in another month or so. But eventually the FDA banned them, not because they were necessarily dangerous, but because they needed to be studied as the cosmetics world became more regulated. And it's a good thing that they did. So there are many studies. They're not long-term studies, and they're not the best studies, some of them, but some of them are really good observational and retrospective studies. And recently, one of the estrogen companies, the hormone therapy companies, which is called Alloy, did a 3-month double-blinded vehicle-controlled trial using topical estriol, topical estradiol, and just plain placebo vehicle. And they tested it for 3 months. Very solid science. Several things came out of this. There was no significant systemic absorption, which is really important. And in virtually every parameter that was measured, the skin that had used estriol or estradiol, because they came out comparably, which is interesting. The skin improved in many areas, in hydration, in smoothness, in the way it feels, in tactile sensation. Elasticity didn't change so much using either of them, but virtually every participant was very happy with the outcome of using this for 3 months. So to me, it's a safe and great alternative. I'm careful when I prescribe it to patients because estrogen can promote pigmentation. And there are some women who use it on their face and their melasma, which is pigmentation that appears, can flare up. So I'm reluctant to have people do it all over their faces. And, some people use it that way. I personally just recommend small areas. And that's how I do it. But I think it's a very useful thing. If you're 30 years old, you're fully estrogenized. You should not be doing this. But once you become perimenopausal, I think it's a really good idea to support your skin with estrogen.
This is fantastic information. Thank you, because I've been dying to ask you that.
Well, there you have it.
All right. I don't want to go down too much of a rat hole with this one, but exosomes and PRP.
Okay.
Okay. And the reason I'm asking is I know microneedling can be beneficial for improving some texture and whatever. I've done it. It's nice. I notice a difference in my skin, but I've never done PRP. And I've know very little about the exosomes, if you want to talk about that a little bit.
Okay. So let me just talk very briefly. Microneedling is not new. I've been doing microneedling since the late 1990s when I learned it from Des Fernandez, a South African doctor who was a person who pioneered it. And basically, it's the process of making micro injuries with tiny needles into your skin. And you can use needles that vary from very superficial to deeper. Very superficial, not so helpful; deeper, helpful. And what it does is it injures the skin and forces the skin to heal itself. So it helps stimulate collagen and all the things that are active in our own wound healing. And if you are someone who's been microneedling for years, chances are your skin looks pretty good. When you start microneedling at age 60, you're not going to get a major effect. And if you do microneedling that's really, really superficial, I don't know the answer. I think it's something you need to do a lot of, okay? But doing microneedling injures the skin and it comes to heal. There is zero science, zero, behind using PRP with microneedling. In my opinion, this is strictly a financial arrangement. So sometimes I tell my patients, just write the check and don't even bother doing the procedure. If you are doing PRP for other reasons, say your hair, and they have a vial left over, sure, wipe it on your face after microneedling. But to do them intentionally together, I think there is no evidence to say that that is better than microneedling alone. And for those who don't know what PRP is, it's called platelet-rich plasma. That is the process of drawing your blood, separating your red blood cells from your plasma, so the clear from the red, and spinning that down. The plasma contains lots of growth factors and fibroblast generating factors. And the concept is that if you use this part of your blood and inject it back into different areas, you will stimulate recovery, regeneration, rejuvenation, whatever. So it's been used primarily in orthopedics, injecting into joints, people with arthritic joints, or they have a surgery, or they have a torn tendon to try to help speed healing, and in hair loss. And the results are mixed for both. There are some people who do really well with it and others that get no effect at all. So I never tell patients you should definitely do this. If someone is losing their hair and we're trying other modalities and not quite kicking in, then I'll suggest doing a few sessions like a month apart, 3 sessions a month apart, and then waiting with no guarantees that it will do something. And in many patients, it's very helpful. But putting that plasma on top of a microneedle face, I would like to see one real study on it. And I'll eat my hat, but the studies are terrible and they're very few and far between.
Well, and I guess there's some question because I did have an exosome.
That's different.
Yeah, right. But I had a guy that was on my show and we talked about maybe my platelets are older and it wouldn't have the same effect that it would have on someone who's younger.
Right. So what is an exosome? An exosome is basically a delivery system. It's like a little blister that contains all kinds of cell signaling molecules that ostensibly, when used, will tell their neighbors to do something else. So you could deliver messages about anything. And there's a big future in this type of delivery when appropriately done, but I feel like we're very far away from that. When there's so many issues with exosomes, and the biggest one is, what are you getting? Okay, so you as the consumer have no clue what you're getting. If you're getting from plants, who actually believes that a plant signaler is going to tell your human skin what to do? So to me, that's just nonsense, okay? And then there are all kinds of other commercially derived things. You have no idea what is in them, if they are even alive. In the processing of these exosomes, many of them are just degraded. So most of the time you're being sold a bill of goods. There is one line called Plated, and it actually is human derived. And there is science in that company, a lot of it. There's science behind how they do it, the sterility, the process, everything. And it is conceivably the best of the lot, but having tried it on many patients and on myself, I saw absolutely no difference. And, you need to also realize that with these ingredients, it isn't like you put them on your face and they travel to your arm. So it would be that you have to put it on the area that you're attempting to fix. And that usually is covering a broad swath of your skin. And these things are a fortune. So there are some people who do microneedling and then put exosomes on. There is, again, zero evidence that that is worth anything. And once again, I would just write the check. Don't bother staying for the half-hour procedure. Just write the check.
Okay. No, that's good. And then I guess my other question, kind of on the same line, is taking collagen supplements.
Taking collagen supplements. There have been a few studies that say that the skin looks better after people drink collagen. It's not actually collagen that you're drinking. It's amino acid chains, and they're broken up in the stomach. They're digested. Does drinking that translate into building collagen in your skin? I don't think so. And most solid scientists don't think so. There are some sporadic studies that show that people who drink them feel that it helps their skin. And if it does, and it doesn't hurt you, because it doesn't, then go for it. Spend the money. I don't care. But I wouldn't think of that as a mainstay of skin health treatment.
Okay. All right. I have, it's not too personal a question, but if you were told you could only use 3 to 4 products on your skin in your daily regimen, what would that be?
That's easy. That's super easy. Well, the two other sunscreens, and we dermatologists sound like broken records, but I cannot stress to you enough how if you start using sunscreen consistently when you're in your 20s, because theoretically before that your mother or father is putting it on you and yelling at you, you will reap the benefits so much when you get older, and you don't realize all the things that are going to bother you when you get older. When your skin is gorgeous and, clear and whatnot, when you're 30 years old and you look in the mirror and say, oh my God, I am special. Then you turn to a 50-year-old who suddenly wakes up one day with brown spots all over your face. So sunscreen is the most important. The gold standard for important skincare ingredients are retinoids. And I think that everyone who cares about their skin health and appearance should be using retinoids. Now, what age? I don't know the right answer, but I would say certainly starting by around 30. And you can start low, and that would be something that you should use for the rest of your life, unless there's a reason why you can't. And there are not too many reasons why you can't. So I would say sunscreen, retinoids. There's also good hard science behind the use of antioxidants like vitamin C, L-ascorbic acid, on the skin, particularly when exposed to the sun, that it helps minimize sunburns, inflammation, free radical formation, and all those things. And there's another skincare ingredient that doesn't get a lot of play, and I don't know why, because I'm a real big advocate for this, DNA repair enzymes. And these have excellent science behind them. And these are they're cosmetics, honestly. They're ingredients in cosmetics that are applied to the skin. And when they're applied, they immediately counteract some of the damage being done by ultraviolet B. So the sun hits your face or wherever you're using them, turns some cells, starts producing free radicals, and these enzymes that come from plants or bacteria reduce that damage. It's incredible. Now, I volunteer at a camp that's for children with a disease that's called xeroderma pigmentosum, which some of you may be aware of. They call them the midnight children. These are children born with a genetic defect that doesn't allow them to repair any damage from the sun. So by the time they're 8 years old, they could have 300 skin cancers, and it's really a difficult life. They're completely freckled from head to toe. Going outside is dangerous for them. And there's this wonderful camp that operates at night. And it's really an incredible place where the kids do everything, but in the dark. But listen, it's a very hard life to live, and it's hard for the families. We started giving these kids these topical DNA repair enzymes, and it's been amazing to watch how much better their skin does. Now, they're not sunscreens, okay? So you don't forfeit a sunscreen and use this. But there's a lot of products that have them. And some of them are activated by light. Some of them work at night. And I talk about this a lot on social media. But so when you're asking me what are the things I would use every day of my life, I use sunscreen, vitamin C, DNA repair, and retinoids. And those are my four things. Okay. I say to patients, if these other things you like, you want to use them, you want to use peptides, you want to use growth factors, whatever else you want to use because you like it, it's like putting on your clothing in the morning. You need to wear a shirt and pants. If you want to wear a jacket, be my guest. You want to put a scarf? Fine, go. But you can't go out without shirt and pants on. And that's how I look at it.
These DNA repair enzymes, are there certain products that we should look out for?
There are products that have them, and then these DNA repair enzymes have names. And I list these things in my social, on my social media account. But there are things that have plankton extract. That's one of them. Arabidopsis thaliana from the mustard plant is another one. Then there's something called Microcystis luteus, which is from bacteria, and that's another one. And so you should look for these things in products. And on my account, I list the names of products that have them.
Okay. Oh, that's great. And then I have one more question for you. Besides sunscreen, because we already know that, what is one of your core pillars of self-care? What's something you do for yourself every day?
Oh, well, I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. I don't do a lot of, quote, self-care. I don't put myself into saunas. I don't do any of that stuff. I don't see any point in doing that. I exercise. That's my form of self-care, because if you don't have good muscle tone as you get older, you're up, what's creek.
Yeah.
No way of reversing that, and keeping good muscle tone, in addition to all the other health benefits, bone health, cardiovascular health. It's a good thing to stay fit. And that's something that I've always done. That's a pillar of my life. I get up at 5:00 every morning and I work out like 5 of 7 days. And I've done that for a million years.
Now, see, you did have a pillar of self-care. You just had to think about it for a second.
Right. It just usually hurts.
I know. It doesn't feel like self-care sometimes. Dr. Ellen Gendler, where can listeners find you?
They can hear me on Instagram, and I post those things again on TikTok and under my name, Ellen Gendler, MD.
Perfect.
And I do videos on topics germane to skincare, to skin health. I try to bust myths. I try to be sensible. I try to give medical and cosmetic advice. Some people say I'm a naysayer, but really I look for things that work, and I try to keep my patients very happy and sane without spending inordinate amounts of money or throwing money out. I want everything that a patient does to be helpful, because it doesn't reflect well on me if not. And I urge all of you to start looking into using a retinoid at whatever age you are. It's never too late to start that, and you will be forever grateful. I can always tell when an older woman comes into my office with really beautiful skin, and I have a whole collection of photos of these. I say, how long have you been using Retin-A? And they always say, I've been using it for 20 years. I mean, that's just a given. Beautiful skin, retinoids.
Okay. I hear you. I'm going to get a little more aggressive with my retinoid.
Should.
Dr. Ellen Gendler, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me, Michelle.
Hey, thanks for tuning in. Please rate and review the show where you listen to the podcast. And did you know that Asking for a Friend is available now to listen on YouTube? You can subscribe to the podcast there as well. Your support is appreciated, and it helps others find the show. Thank you.